everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar. I am your host as always, and I'm joined this week by two doyens of the Heart and Hand universe. First of all, the much-loved Sage of Saltcoats, Andy McGowan. Hello, Andy.
Hello, David. I'm a bit discombobulated. You've got me on after a win. I don't know what this is about. I feel as if I'm in a kind of parallel universe here. This is strange territory for me.
Yes, we'll come to that. And bringing some experience to the fore, it's Alan Bradley. Hello, Alan.
Hello, David. You like Andy? I'm confused because normally I come on when a Rangers great has passed away. And okay, before you start, Bobby Charlton, I did see him playing with England. He was a great player. That's all you're getting, Davey. But like Andy, I'm just confused. Great performance. What will I do?
This is the thing, and I was trying to think about this. This season, genuinely, there hasn't been one. Betis was enjoyable because it was a win against a good side. But in terms of an enjoyable performance, I suppose the only comparative ones were maybe the 4-0 victories over Livingston, but they were different to this. Mm-hmm. This was all the things that we had been asking for as fans. And I think the frustrating thing, not to harp on about a negative, because we do want to enjoy this after the season we've had so far, folks. But Andy, I get frustrated because I'm a layman, right? I'm not a football coach or professional or whatever. And me and you and all our friends and all our listeners and relatives, you name it, people we sit near at Ibrox, all of it, we were all saying, they play too slow and they play side to side. We need to speed everything up. We need to make things go faster. We need more guys running forward. We need more forward passes. Yeah, they'll know all come off, but that's okay. The fans will get behind them if they can see what they're trying. That's exactly what we got on Saturday. And is it too easy to say, well, a proper manager's come in and look?
I mean, it's easy to go there. It is easy to go there. And
I'm never knowingly don't take the easy path in anything.
Well, it's about the theory versus the practice. I don't think Beale was deliberately having us play into the play was. You could see his frustration in his face and his kind of gestures at the side of the park many a time. But that is where the manager earns his corn, is actually transforming the theory into the practice and what you see every day in the training park being shown on the pitch on a Saturday or Sunday. And there was a couple of things happened on Saturday, David, that is fairly intangible and is no doing a new manager. There was tangible, palpable goodwill from the crowd again, from the card display to just the general demeanour of the crowd with the team. And I think Clement described it as synergy. That was there, and I don't think we can underestimate how much a difference that makes to the players on the park, but also just the general anticipation of a game. If you're going into that game and it was still boo territory, then there's a feeling of dread if you're a Rangers player going out there because you're playing under pressure. Whereas I think they knew that going out there it was a complete clean slate, but there was a fair few players in there that looked a wee bit, a spring in their legs that wasn't there beforehand. But to your point about, is it just the manager? You can't discount it, and it's only been a week of training grounds interaction between him and the players, trying to embed a philosophy. I know he's been very good at speaking about how it'll not happen overnight, but the early signs were, as you say, Davey, things that we've been asking for. You're like, there it's there. That's it. That's what we've been asking for. And, simple things like pressing with two men, offset and risky pass taking with an ability to recover the ball quickly. All this kind of stuff. It seems it is simple on paper, but there's definitely been a problem getting on apart. But I was heartened, and I was listening to you, Davey, about no getting carried away, and I'm the same. It's kind of not even once bitten, 5 times bitten, twice shy. It's too easy just to say, oh, this is us, and we've got a special manager, and the future's looking. There's a lot of challenges ahead, but as a start and as an introducer to the world of the play that we're going to have under Clement, I'm excited.
Yeah, I hate to do that, to be the guy that goes, well, let's not get carried away. But as you say, it's hard not to. And listen, the other thing is, okay, you did it once. New manager, first game. and I'm talking about players here. I'm not specifically talking. We know what the manager wants to do, but we've seen them do this and then just react back, go backwards and step back into that really side to side lateral nonsense that the manager has spoken about. But I think little things, Alan, at the weekend, like when we got a throw in, we didn't need a 20-second discussion before it got thrown back in. People were running and grabbing it and throwing it back in and starting again, and just playing with a verve. And like, this is going to sound odd because we've won 4-0, but I was actually quite impressed with the way that Hibs moved the ball. Now the front lads had an off day. There's no doubt about that. The front lads were poor. I've seen them better than that. The recent match against Hearts, for example, Yuan was terrific, and he was well off it at the weekend. So it didn't amount to much, and that obviously helped us. But they were, I thought, quite decent moving the ball. And I was just sitting thinking, because the two managers that both clubs had before and now the two managers have got, I was thinking, that's the difference. That's the difference in coaching. But Rangers showed intent and purpose and drive. And as Andy said, the fans saw that early on, got really in behind it. There wasn't the kind of frustration building up in the stands because, there was some passes that were astray. That's going to happen. We understand that. But as Andy said, when they gave the ball away, they went and tried to get it back rather than just funnel back into a shape and sit there and wait for something to happen. And it was just enjoyable.
I mean, I'm like you guys as well. I had noted right away, it's only one game. It's only 1 week, in terms of where we've come. But if you think even of, that environment systems people thingy, David, Andy talked about it, the environment, it's like new manager, what we're going to be like, the mood in the ground and so on. So that was all really good. The systems as well, I think he's reinforced over the last week. He's gone on about, as you say, all the points about we've got to do this, we've got to be more professional, we've got to. So the actual systems itself is definitely embedded a fair wee bit of them within that first week. And as you say, I think because even of the shape, as you say, the Hibs, good team, moved the ball about, but we very quickly got there, didn't we? We were kind of ganging up on them, taking it off them. As you say, if we lost it, it wasn't like moan. It was just like, oh my goodness, we're picking it up again. So there was that. And I think the big thing was the people. And one of my concerns about him was his CV looked wonderful and so on, in terms of his experience, and we're getting a proper manager. But I thought, is he going to be one of these managers that are really going to fear they're going to have to? And I think with me, he's ticking that box. And I think a few of them have got a rocket up in their backside anyway, David. I don't know how it'll go. But just the whole attitude, the way they doubled up, working for each other. And again, it was smashing. At 70 minutes, you're thinking, rather than panicking, this is actually fun. Do you know what I mean? Rangers were actually playing. It was like going away back to, and I know we had some poor times with Walter and things like that, but it's at Ibrox. We're kind of all behind them. We'll be playing some of the football, even if there's a wee blip, fine. There just seemed to be that confidence. I don't know. And as I say, again, it's only 1 week and, 1 week and one game. But my goodness, it just seems night and day, doesn't it?
Yeah,
see, David, sorry to interrupt you. Just one wee quick word on Hibs. I totally agree with you about the way they tried to play. And there's a lesson there for Scottish football that
Too open.
Well, they were too open, but they're going to get beat up as anyway. They've not won a game against us for. Aye, but the thing is, they've not won a game against us for what? That's the 9th game. They've not won against us.
So, win in a row. But no, that's I know, but I can just hear. I'm sorry, but I need to play devil's advocate because other people say, "Well, of course you're going to say that because they were open and it let you play football and beat them. They'd have been better off coming and putting 10 men behind the ball." I would tend to agree with you that no, they weren't. And if their forwards had been on the way they have been recently, they could have got something.
Yeah,
I just think it improves your chances.
It made a better game. It was a good game to watch, and although they made mistakes, the kind of point I was going to make was that see if they played like that against every week against the teams that are their peers, because let's face it, we're not their peers, then they're going to be a good team to watch. Their fans will be more enjoying the game, and more teams should do that. And I'm not just saying that so that we can scud their arse every time we play them, but I look at the Dutch league and that's kind of what happens there. These teams play the football that they want to play, and then when they come up against Ajax, PSV, all right, there's always scalping, but
not Ajax right now.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But it's better for Scottish football if there was more teams trying to do what they were doing, which is play decent ball for the back football, taking risks. I just thought I was surprised by it, Davey. I was going to say refreshing, but it wasn't
But
refreshing.
they were actually quite good at it. That's the thing. And although Rangers, I thought, our press in the second, it was more a case that Rangers' press in the second half was really good rather than Hibs' passing was really bad. And we forced mistakes. And I think they probably do need to upgrade their keeper, not to focus too much on Hibs. I think he's come to the end of the line, as happens to every sportsman. But that was their first defeat under Montgomery. And, clearly, because they were piss poor under their previous manager. But, on another day they get, the forwards, Boyle, it's a decent player, Ewan's a decent player, Lafondra's been doing reasonably well for them. They get a goal and things change. But back to us, more importantly, now the manager didn't have an awful lot of options. There were some players back on the bench, and we'll come to their returns later. But, Lammers and Dessers were in the side. And an interesting afternoon for both of them. Both shit out of confidence, quite clear. Dessers, I thought, was better. Wasn't great. Was better, though. Contributed, Andy. I thought was asked to do a more straightforward job, which is kind of what I think you need to do with a player who is out of confidence anyway, no matter, we can talk about talent levels later, but you say to him, right, I need you to do this today, right? This is what you have to do. Not, a half a dozen things. Just literally, this is your job. And what I thought was really pleasing was he got his goal. And by the way, it was a lovely finish. And okay, it was 3-0 at the time, so a wee bit of pressure off. But it was a very calm finish from a wonderful Cantwell ball. But I loved the reaction he got. The manager, I thought, was quite clever. He took him off, I think, to give him that opportunity to get a cheer from the crowd. And he got one. And you could actually see, I thought, his shoulders go up a bit as he was coming off. And it's just a little thing like that. I thought, yeah, that's what we need to do. Because as frustrated as we get with these players, I mean, when Lammers hit the post with that one, you'll just think, Christ. But shouting and bawling at them isn't going to make them play better.
So we've kind of touched on this before, David, haven't we? And with Dessers, I mean, I've been really, really critical to the point that it's kind of unprecedented for me to write a player off. I was 95% of the way there. And I said the only kind of last thing that we've got to cling to is that could he play in a duo? Because I always suspected that if he might be a finisher, but just not seen it. But holding the ball up and jumping and pace wise, he's just so far removed from what we've been used to with Morelos' hold up play, and it's quite stark at times when you're watching it. And that's still there, and I still think long term he's not going to be the answer. But what we've got is a situation, as I've said before, is that we've got to get a tune on him. We've got to get, use the phrase contribution, and we've got to get players contributing in games like this where it's no Celtic, right? I still have the fear about him going to Parkhead and him playing up front, but him, Lammers, Scott Wright, and again, Scott Wright, I don't like him as a player. I think he's no improved one bit since he came, and he's never really done much for us. He contributed, Lammers contributed, and Dessers, apart from his goal, he had a hand in another two of the goals, although the first one's fairly spurious, but still, he creates his space, and he should have been, he laid one on a plate for Lammers, who should have scored quite easily. So I go back to what I said earlier about getting carried away, but those are green shoots, right? And if we can get 10, 15 goals out of Dessers for the season, if we can get 5 to 10 goals off Lammers, but it contributes more, because I quite like the shape of that team, Davey. Play, as far as I can see, it was a kind of 4-1-3-2. You had Lundstrom in front of the defence, and it allowed Raskin to get forward, and you'd kind of Lammers linking between the middle and the front, and then you obviously had pace between Scott Wright and Seema. I really liked it. I thought it was, as a shape, it was great, and it's just a question of what quality you get fitted in those positions. So I thought it was interesting as well, just as an aside, that Suter walked back in after a week away with Scotland before Davies, who'd have been at training. I thought that was really interesting.
Do you know the reason I thought it was? And by the way, Suter has got a terrible habit. He did it again at the weekend of getting under a ball, particularly from long throws. And it happened again where he misjudges the header and is then taken out of the game by himself. And he really does need to fix that. But he brings the ball out of
He's
defence.
brilliant at it.
And yes, he is excellent at it. I mean, he really, really is good at it. He's very composed. I can't remember offhand him losing too many times or misplacing a pass dangerously. He's excellent at bringing the ball out and starting an attack. And I think that's why the manager gave him the nod. But like I say, although we did say earlier in the season that he was in a position where every time he made a mistake, it was a goal. And statistically, that couldn't keep up. And it didn't, thankfully, at the weekend. But it is just, it's a flaw in his game. And I don't want to pick on him because he was good overall. But just get rid of that. Just either learn to time your jumps better or learn when not to go. Do you need to go and attack that at that point? But let's look at some of the positives because there were some, and we haven't had too much to cheer about this season. Andy mentions the shape there. I liked it because apart from what he said, it also did allow us to press collectively rather than in ones and twos, and there's no use doing that. I mean, that's utterly pointless if you do that. But they were going and they all knew where they were supposed to go. And it allowed Raskin to get forward. Raskin gets his first goal, should have had a second one, Alan, late on in the second half, and just was much further forward than we've seen him in months.
Absolutely, and I think that he's been quite frustrating the past few months, the player that we saw obviously last season, but you're absolutely right, David, he really looked more on it, didn't he? It was, as you say, he was driving things forward. He was still snarling again and breaking play up, which was good, but definitely the best I've seen him playing, certainly this season. I also thought as well, as you say, the likes of them, like SEMA as well, my goodness. And again, that's maybe just a wee one, isn't it? Because if you think, certainly me 2 months ago, what I would be saying about SEMA and how he's developed, and that links, I think, to what you were saying about Big Suter as well. If properly coached, hopefully, these wee flaws, you can improve players and so on. So the likes of Suter and with others, if, as Andy says, we get a tune out of some of the other ones, no, to me, this is the way we've got to go. But I just felt like I just felt confident. It wasn't like suddenly, and we've lost the ball as well. Oh my goodness, the transition's on, here we go. It just, I don't know, it just felt far more kind of solid throughout. And again, obviously Hibs played a wee bit, obviously, into it, but I don't know. As I say, I just feel that the way we kind of set up as well, we were moving about. Also partnerships, I think you talked about, say, even like Lammers, Dessers or whatever, but it's good to see a couple of them. It's a bit like some of the foreign teams you watch and there's always someone available. And I didn't see that. Over the past couple of months, you had guys who were bang shit out of form. There didn't seem to be their kind of neighbour next to them. But even on Saturday, there seemed to be a lot of cases where you went, that's okay. The two of them are going. There's another boy, to relieve them.
There was that the way a press should be, which is there's two you go and there's one in behind you, just in case the guy does break the two of you and shuts off the area. Andy, Alan brought him up there. Abdallah Sima, I thought was sensational, a constant menace with. Obviously, his finishing is top drawer. The first one is superb. Just knows exactly what he wants to do. Burst of pace straight through the difficult but perfectly executed finish. I loved the second one because when everybody's standing about, Dessers is claiming a penalty, the Hibs players are looking at the ref to see if it's a penalty. He wasn't thinking like that. That's what a goal scorer does. A goal scorer goes, hold on, I can score here. And then we'll sort it out once I put the ball in the net. I loved that. Again, it was a decent finish, by the way, but it wasn't as spectacular as the first one. But that's a natural goal scorer to me. A guy who just... And he's had a few that, again, weren't spectacular, but Betis was one, even the one against Aberdeen, where he just gets in there. He's like... He sniffs, I could get a goal. If I get myself into that position, I can be there to finish that. And I don't think it's coincidence that he's scoring as many goals as he's scoring.
I love wide strikers. I love when they're effective. And my mind's drifting back to Ryan Kent here. Because I watched SEMA pre-season. I'm sure everybody watched him pre-season. And in the flesh, I was watching him and I'm like, he couldn't... It was as if he was like Sakala in terms of knowing when to run, when not to run, and you've seen Cantwell and other players shouting and balling at him, telling him what to do, and I thought, I don't know about this boy. He's not the player I remember for Slavia, and then sometimes his twitches laughably like Gordon Jury drunk bad, right? And you're like, Jesus. And then he gets that sniffy chance and he outpaces the boy and he's got superb power and he's running. with and without the ball. And then one thing he does know how to do is finish. And this is where the dichotomy we had with Kent, which was a guy who was a key player for us, contributed so much, but you often wonder, could we be getting more with somebody that's just knows aesthetically good to watch and maybe knows good work ethic or works the full length apart, but just a killer, somebody that kills teams. SEMA's starting to show, and I'm hoping it's not just a wee purple patch here, but he's starting to show that he's a killer. You give him a chance, or you give him sight of a mistake or a bit of an opening, and he's going to try. He's going to try and put you to the sword, and he's doing it quite often now. But as you say, Dave, he's got variation in what kind of goals he's getting, because the one against Betis was a tap in, being in and around the correct area at the same time. And I like the fact that he does that for wide, because it means you then get another a real striker. So if you've got a wide striker that scores goals as a striker, then you're supposed to have another striker. So it's more goals in the forward line, which we've been sorely lacking for
hugely
4 years. So
absolutely.
it's
he's a lot sharper too, Andy. I mean, I don't know if you noticed at the weekend, he's got that wee trick now where he goes down the wing, he kind of stops. The full-back or the others are with him, and then he just goes, watch this, and he just accelerates. And, and to me, that opens things up as well, because right away you're playing centre, you're thinking, shit, I need to go over and cover, and it's opening things up as well, isn't it?
But you mentioned partnerships in the park, Alan. I'm not saying that these were totally apparent, but the shape of that team lends itself to Tavernier having a link with the person in front of him, because Wright was just he was like an inside right, if you want. And then the other side, SEMA would go extremely wide, but sometimes you'd come in, or young Yilmaz would take the inside channel. So it just felt more fluid. And I've got to mention Lundstrom. Lundstrom gets a lot of criticism. I like Lundstrom as a player, but I just think he doesn't turn up against Celtic often enough. This is the big thing. He needs to do it then. I think most other games he's kind of a controlling influence. I thought he was excellent. I thought he picked up a lot of loose balls, and he was visibly more forward thinking, and it allowed Raskin to do what he did. So
I think
we're sounding a bit effusive here, but that's where the promise is coming from.
But know what's good as well, Andy? You talked about, if you think of SEMA was coming back at one point, and he was coming back and defending, and it means that Raskin, if he's going in the overlap, and it kind of breaks down, you've got SEMA or vice versa. I thought with Tavernier as well on the right then, because suddenly then he looked a lot better. I think he looked comfier as well on Saturday, because again, he's not thinking, shit, I need to be away up here, and then within minutes or seconds, I need to be away back down,
Yeah.
I think that there's an element of clarity that the manager has brought. I think that's probably the word I keep coming back to. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because, again, I don't want to harp too back to the previous manager. We can only go on what the new manager has done, but unfortunately it's still lingering, so it's still relevant. I thought at the weekend, coming out of the ground, having listened to him, that had been 3 press conferences he'd done. And I mentioned on one of our daily shows last week that it's only a press conference, you don't get any points for it. But he said the same thing 3 times. It was, if you like, a consistent message. And this is before, he's unveiling before the game, after the game, where he spoke about the same things. And then you saw what he was trying to do. And as he said himself afterwards, it wasn't perfect. And there's a lot of work to be done and a long way to go. And he's spot on there. At one point, he was actually asked if, he thought it was a lot better the day, and he went, did you think it was better? As much as, really? I thought it was all right. He wasn't getting carried away at all. But I kept coming back to the fact of, he has told us that he's unveiling what he wants to do. He's told us on the Friday specifically what he wants us to do in the game. And then the team did it. And we could see it. And again, he's not tried to tell us afterwards that was perfect and it was exactly what he wanted. He was just saying, there are the signs, this is the direction that we're going to go, that I want us to go. And I just thought it came back to trust, which I think is a big thing for any football fan to have in their manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The trust that he's going to be able to tell you, not in detail, He's not, and he's already made jokes about that. He's like, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do because other managers will watch this. I don't want to, I
Make
don't
it
want
easy
to
for
make it
them,
easy for them. Yeah. So I like that, but I just think it helps you to build that trust in a manager where he tells you what he wants to do. He tells you how long it's going to take, and you see signs of it. Not perfect. I really don't want anyone coming away from this thinking, oh, Edgar say that's everything fixed, because I'm not. But I just felt coming out of the ground, that's somebody who's in command of what he wants to do. Now, whether he'll be able to do it long term, we don't know. 1-1, it's no guarantor of success. But you got the impression of a plan. And after watching us flailing about, Andy, for the past, 3 months, where we would change formations constantly, but more importantly, change the style of play didn't change. The thing that was the problem, because it didn't matter if you put Rangers out in a 4-4-2, a 4-5-1, a 3-4-3, whatever, right? They were taking ages to play passes. They were taking ages to get the ball back into play. They weren't moving hard enough. They weren't playing forward passes enough. He came in and he said, they play the ball from side to side far too much. They don't run off the ball enough. They don't press. He said on Friday, this is what I want to see from us. We saw it. And then he said, well, that's what we're going to do, but we'll do it better than that. And I just began to think, you need that to establish a bond. Trust is all important. I go back, as I always do, as we always do, we go back to Walter, because he will always be, I think, for us, the touchstone of a Rangers manager, understandably so. I think, there are legends at Rangers, and then there are actual Mount Rushmore Rangers, and Walter's one of them. But you always, when you saw him out there on the touchline, you always thought, we'll be all right because he's there. And you never really got that impression under Beale. He never forged that connection. And Clement's got a long way to go to do it, but I at least think he's on the right track.
No, that's a fair kind of concept. And I've never really thought about it like that, David, about trusting the manager, because I don't think what Clement's done in the first week of his tenure in terms of front of the cameras and microphones is remarkable. I think it's fairly normal, right? I think where we've got a contrast is that Beale was, on one hand, it was refreshing to see him speak freely, right? But on the other hand, it could constitute monumental naivety, because he wasn't as media trained as he should have been for a person in his position. And we're no stupid Rangers fans. We remember what's been said, because we absorb everything to do with our club. And he used to contradict himself fairly frequently, to the point where you're like, that's not what you said a couple of months ago. So I think that undermined Beale, either consciously or subconsciously, amongst the Rangers support, because you just get that sixth sense of, he's blithering in here. What we're seeing, what we're feeling doesn't correspond with what you're saying, Michael. And over time, that eroded that very trust that you're talking about. But I've never really thought of it that way. I think I just haven't done that. But with Clement, he's come in and I listened to his press conferences. I watched the thing live when he was introduced, and I thought, fine, he's saying the right things, and he seems to have a clear vision. I thought that clarity was something that was going to be a big strength of his, because I think our players need clarity. But what did catch my attention during the week was when he mentioned, I can't remember when he mentioned it, I think I read it, was about the kind of individual programmes, and about how you were saying, look, if you've got your best players doing this, and then he kind of layered these players into different segments of top players, middle players, bottom players, and and how you get the best out of them. And I thought, right, that's different thinking for what I think's been at the club, because for too long we've been just relying on the fact that our players are better than the team that we're playing, and all the kind of mechanics, excuse me, all the mechanics and systems that fitting around it have been substandard for us. But if we can get a team that has a proper system, proper tactics, proper understanding of what the manager's asking them to do, and it works, then we will be a force to be reckoned with. Because that's what Celtic are doing. They're well coached, they're well drilled, they know what they're doing, they know how to play, they know where they should be, and they're better players than every team they're playing. So therefore, that's why they keep on winning, and they're fairly relentless. We need to get to that place. So that comes with the CV. You don't win the number of titles he's won in Belgium without having, first of all, a mindset, but also the ability to apply what you're trying to get over to your players and for it to become a real thing. And I go back to theory versus reality, theory versus practice. And that's why I'm tempering my excitement, because I'm saying, right, that's 1 week. And we've seen such a transformation. You're going to have a new manager bounce because the players are going to be
Trying
a new voice, that kind of stuff. But this is what we should have at Rangers, is forward-thinking, proper management. No kind of... And I'm not wanting to be cruel to Beale because he's had a hard time lately, but the more he spoke, the more I'm like, this is flying by your seat of your pants stuff.
I think the trust as well, Andy, it will grow following his example. And you talk about manager or leader, but if it is, like David said, obviously with Walter, but the likes of, he's coming across at the moment, very professional, awfully considered as well, kind of determined kind of guy as well. And the more he passes that on, but I think the leadership, the way, even with Lammers, I think as well, and also with Dessers, but he does that wee standing, talking to them and so on.
Yeah.
You know what it's like, everybody's been like that, and sometimes you can be in a role where you are struggling and so on. And I think if someone does, you know, it's okay, a wee arm round them now and then and build them up. And then if they can then go back on to performing, you know, kind of far better, that'll build up trust as well. And it's just those wee noticeable, just within that first week, you're thinking, geez, oh, you know, but again, that'll come round to the vast experience that he's got, you know, in terms of obviously managing over in Belgium and in Monaco. The other thing too as well is, again, maybe, well, let's not go back to the previous one, but in terms of your experience as a footballer as well, hell of an experienced player as well, playing internationally too. That in itself, if I'm a manager, if I'm saying, well, what have you actually done? You look at him, you think, aye, okay, he knows what he's talking about. And I think the one thing that I liked as well was I'm not going to the clarity thing. I'm not going to try and tell them everything because it blows their mind. We will do, this is what we're going to do. Once we think that's beginning to embed itself in, we will then go on to, as David mentioned it, whereas I've got a feeling that I think before some of the players would go, we don't really know kind of what we're doing. Sometimes it changes. It was as if we were just trying too many things, you know, and he seems to have gone back more to the basic stuff. You know.
Yeah, and Andy's point about you can overcomplicate it, I think particularly in Scotland, I think is very true. You know, there is very little complicated about what Celtic do. They just do it well. They're confident in that their players have the ability to be better than the opposition. But I think we also had an over-reliance on special players being special, which is, you know, Tav will come up with something, Cantwell will come up with something. Somebody will do something and that'll get us over the line. And the majority of times it does. You know, we have won more games than we haven't over the last year. But it's just been... you know, such a sludge every single week, or sludge rather, every single week. It's just been that you knew that, well, if what happens on the day that somebody doesn't do something, and we know what happens, Kilmarnock happens, you know, because, or Aberdeen happens. What happens in the days when they don't play well? The structure isn't there to allow them to kind of recoup and recover from that. We move on then to Thursday night. We're going to go to Prague and back into, we seem to go there every year when we're in the Europa League. And it will be a tough match. And on that, Alan, at the weekend, the one thing that didn't really happen was that they didn't come up against any adversity. And by that, I mean a tough situation where they were pinned back for a certain amount of time, or they couldn't get the ball, or they lost a goal. Against Aberdeen, that's exactly what happened. The Rangers were actually all right for the first half hour of that game. Should have scored, didn't, obviously. But when we conceded the goal, we just completely, you know, that was it. Rangers just, the heads went down and there was zero belief in it. We will face adversity in Prague. There's no doubt about that. We will face a tough environment against a decent side, a very decent side. And we know what it's like over there. It's very hostile. There will be times we don't have the ball, and there will be times we're under pressure. This is the next test then for the players. How do you handle this when you haven't had a good track record of that recently? How do you handle being in a cauldron when things aren't going for you? what are you going to do? Are you going to stand up then and be counted? And as we know in Limassol, for example, they didn't.
Yeah, and I think this is where the manager, obviously, well, the players, we talked about the kind of players as well and what they've been like before, and this is where the manager can only do so much, David. So in terms of obviously the setup and the shape and so on, kind of working on that one. But then the manager talked about it too as well, didn't he? He says it's how people can bounce back where things go wrong. To me, this is the big test now, because we know there's a whole number of them that when they go and get tough, they just basically crumbled. And again, this is going to be the real interesting thing for me on Thursday. I'm not going to place as much on this one on Thursday if it just doesn't work out properly, because I think it's such a challenge for the manager. But I think if he can set us up okay and, we can get through this one, then obviously then we'd be talking about it's only 2 weeks. When do I book my flights to Dublin? But your point, definitely. I mean, it's going to be a real tough one. I'm kind of hoping, again, it's just try and hit them with pace, David, and try and break. I think, was it 3-2, their game, wasn't it? So they do lose goals
Against
as well.
Aris, yeah, it was, yeah.
But as you say, it's our side of it. Thank God for Jack Butland. But again, it's the rest of the defence. I don't know if even full back. I don't know whether do we end up with Balogun getting in there, or is it Devine, or, because we've obviously got a big challenge there.
Yeah, you would assume it would either be Sterling or potentially Davis. I think Davis has been spoken about as having played left back before, which obviously is a different type of player. You wouldn't expect him to be getting forward as much, so you need to adapt. But that's the reality of the situation. Yilmaz isn't in the European squad, so we're going to have to do a wee bit of make do and mending. And on that, then, is this an opportunity for the players to go and show, well, hang on a minute here, right? We've been criticised for this before. I think very justly criticised for this before. When, as Alan says, the goings got tough and they've hidden. Here's an opportunity where it'd be great if they go out and they play sensational football and they're 3 up inside 20 minutes, but it's unlikely, right? It's unlikely. There will be times when you've got to work hard, you've got to throw yourself in front of the ball, you've got to hang on in there. And then you've got to be brave when you get the ball and go forward. And as we say on here a lot, but it's true, bravery in football isn't smashing somebody right in front of the referee and getting a yellow card. Bravery is in a hostile environment when you've not seen the ball for 5 minutes, still trying to play the killer pass, still trying to get forward. Do you think the players will see this as an opportunity to begin to put right some of the things the last few weeks, or will we need to just wait and see, but with a suspicion of we know what they've done in the past?
I think there's got to be a reaction to the Limassol result. And I know it's like game to game, we're thinking Hibs to Prague, but I think for a European perspective, there's got to be a reaction here, because we could still have a really good season. And key to that could be an extended run in the Europa League. And this is a game that is doable for us. I think Sparta I spoke about peers earlier, and I think they're peers of ours at this moment in time, and we should be going over there with an intention to win. You'd probably take a draw, but you want to go there and win, because I think it puts in a really good position in the group. And that goes back to mindset and belief, and what I don't think that has been there enough in the past recent months is belief in whatever we were trying to implement. I've got to be honest, whatever Bale and his team were trying to implement on the park, I don't think the players, they were trying their hardest. I don't think there was ever a case of them, I'm not saying hiding, but because there was players hiding, but I don't think
I don't think it's deniable.
But the system allowed them to hide, Davey, because I mean, we've spoken about Tav being the lightning rod, and I've kind of defended him, said, but that's because he's the one they look to all the time, and things like that shouldn't really happen. And a
Tav might play badly, and sometimes has, but he doesn't hide.
But in a functioning team, you shouldn't really have to. I mean, as you say, that if the player has an off day, then somebody else should be picking up the slack. And I did not see that anywhere in our previous system and formations and selection. So what you've got now is a formation where there's umpteen players that should be able to contribute. I mean, I'm talking about Scott Wright here. If Scott Wright starts, because he's got pace and should be suited to an away game in Europe.
With SEMA as well. Yeah.
SEMA, and they should be looked at and said, right, we're expecting you to do something here. You have got a responsibility. And I think that arm round the shoulder thing for Clermont is there, but I also think the kind of stark, here is what is expected of you, and that's good management, even in day-to-day life. If your manager says, right, listen, this is what I expect of you, here's the expectations, hit it. And then you know exactly what's required of you. I don't think there's been enough of that at Rangers because there have been too many shirking the responsibility and quite happy to see it slide off their shoulders onto other folk who, I'm talking about Taff here, I'm talking about, I think who else? Cantwell, Lundstrom to a lesser degree. It's been sliding off them onto others and they've been taking a stick for it, and that'll have weighed really, really heavy on them. That's not a teammate should be doing, that's not what a squad should be doing. So, to your point, Davey, I think we should be going out there looking for a really positive result, and by that I mean a victory. It'll be a hard game, and it would be sore to have a false start, if it makes sense, to play well on Saturday against Hibs and then go there and falter. It's not the end of the world, but it would just bring all sorts of doubts and negativity just back into vision.
Yeah, it'd be nice to continue to build momentum. I think that's important. As you say, we've got a lot of big games coming out, with Hearts, then again in the League Cup semi coming up. So yeah, just getting that momentum, confidence, whatever you want to call it, and guys automatically beginning to take responsibility as opposed to looking for ways to avoid it. And fingers crossed we'll see that from them at the weekend. So I think today's pod, cautiously optimistic. I think that's probably our mood. Would that be a fair description of it, lads? I think,
No, 5-9.
But yeah, I love that. That's us back. Right?
We're not going to get beat 5-0, Andy. It'll not be 5.
We'll get a goal, as the old joke goes. But,
I think if we could get David, to be honest with you, Andy says go for it. If we could get a draw, we get them back at Ibrox, we beat them at Ibrox, and then we've got Limassol. And to me, that would keep things going, yeah.
Well, it's the old rule in Europe: if you can't win, don't get beat. In the group stage in Europe, that's exactly the attitude. But go there and try and win, because as Andy says, you get the victory and then you're really well set up for the rest of the group.
It would offset Limassol in some respects.
A wee bit, aye. I think if we did 6 points for 3 games and they came, Betis, Limassol, lost, we could probably have handled that. But I think, although our record in Prague isn't particularly good, still no time at present to put that right. Before we go today, folks, can I just let you know of the Heart and Hand live show, December the 1st at New Edmiston House. Tickets have gone pretty well, but obviously with the last month, we still have the last of them to sell. Don't think people are in the mood for more Rangers. We have added to, and we'll announce it later in the week, but we have added a 9 in a row legend. I do mean legend to the show. He'll be there on the night. 90s, 111 goals. You can work it out for yourself. Just time to thank our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and to thank my 2 guests. As always, splendid shift from both as usual. I wish the team was as consistent as you lads were. Andy, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. If me and Braders were on the team, then we'd be writing a shit, but that's another story.
Well, it wouldn't be much worse than what we've seen.
Andy, we'd be red carded after 30 minutes, Paul.
I'd be trying to get red carded after 5 minutes. We'd be blowing out my arse.
Somebody put a team together of the Rangers kind of Twitter, and he had me at right back in the Tav role. And while I was grateful for the recognition, it was like, mate, if you think Tag's lives have been gone a wee bit this season, wait till you see me in there. So I don't think that's likely to happen. Alan, thank you.
No, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Yes, and it has been a lot more enjoyable this week. Let's hope we keep it up in Prague. Cammy will be back with Heart and Hand Extra later in the week to go through it. Of course, you can hear from us daily over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Heart and Hand. And I'll be back here next Monday. So until then, have a great week, everyone. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.